Hi, I'm Mark Zipp at Crocker Farm Auction. We've got a great sale planned for you running from November 5th through the 14th. A really wonderful eclectic offering in this sale, both Stoneware and Redware from the North, South, Mid-Atlantic, and Midwestern US. One of the highlights of this sale is this fabulous Bucks County Sgraffito Redware plate attributed to John Monday. A very distinctive Bucks County decoration with this tulip plant emanating from an urn. Used both by John Monday and Conrad Mumbauer, dated March 27th, 1830. Beautiful decoration you can see, carved in the clay in the Sgraffito style with brushed cobalt splotches throughout. What really makes this piece special is the condition. So many of these are found in very rough condition. Oftentimes you'll see the entire interior worn down with a lot of other sporadic wear throughout. This is really in great condition. It comes out of a fabulous collection, one of the leading folk art collections ever assembled, the Ralph Asmarian collection, which sold at Sotheby's in 2014. Pieces like this very rarely come to market. We're very excited to bring it to you as one of the top lots in this auction. Another great piece of redware with a different aesthetic is this fabulous octagonal plate, a recently discovered example, probably Berks County, Pennsylvania, made sometimes during the 19th century. Exceedingly rare drape molded octagonal form. You can see where this was actually placed over a mold and a fettling knife was carved around here. We can see these knife marks throughout. Actually has in size 6 on the underside, partly occluded by the auction sticker, but really wonderful slip trail decoration. If you're looking for a great Sgraffito plate, here's a great example. If you're looking for a great slip trail plate, you really can't find one much better than this. Exceptional form. You can see exceptional condition as well. Essentially nothing wrong with this. And the decorator is using copper slip to form this crossing pattern and the stems of these foliate devices, and then cream colored slip filling in these areas. Really wonderful, kaleidoscopically decorated piece in fabulous condition. This octagonal form, I can't stress enough just how rare this is. So it's a very exciting piece in both form and decoration. Moving along, we have another great example of American redware, this S.H. Way Eola Oregon mug. The North Carolina born potter who ended up in Ohio, fabulously decorated with this yellowish orange slip embellished with combed incising throughout around the shoulder, and this kind of dappled, maybe it was applied with a sponge, slip around the base and the rim, yellow slip interior. Exceedingly rare to find an example of West Coast redware, particularly this quality. I'm really excited to have this. This is the first piece signed by this potter that we've ever offered. Not only is the maker's mark exceedingly rare, but it's really complemented by excellent potting and wonderful slip decoration. Moving along, here's a recently discovered tanware bank from Western Pennsylvania, about 1885. This was made in the New Geneva or Greensboro potting tradition. An exceedingly rare form. You can find banks produced in that region out of tanware. There's a number of them known, but this is the first we've seen of this form. It's a really imaginative form. We have this ovoid body, and typically you'd see maybe it cut off here with no finial, or maybe a little bit of a finial mounding up over there. Instead, we have this dramatic, tall, sculptural stepped finial with the slot carved in it, and then actually a handle applied to it. So it's sort of like a jug bank. You see those maybe by Potter John Bell and some other makers, but it really isn't. It's sealed off at the top. So it's just a very, very wonderful form, very different. You can get some pretty elaborately thrown pieces in that tanware tradition, that kind of souvenir pottery tradition in Western Pennsylvania from the late 19th century. And this is certainly one of them. And we see it's complemented with really nice fuchsia decoration going around, brushed and Albany slip, and a dipped drape motif, all complementing that form so nicely. Really fun piece. We're really excited to offer this as well. We'll be selling a great collection of South Carolina stoneware that was amassed over the last 50 years. These are pieces, a lot of these haven't been on the market since the 70s or 80s. A lot of these pieces, most of them were acquired locally, some of them out of homes. And so really, some of them haven't even seen the light of day, so to speak, in the greater collecting community. One wonderful piece from this collection is a small canning jar attributed to David Drake. And this has a classic glaze associated with the Stony Bluff manufactory, which was owned by Lewis Miles. You can find this glaze on a number of Dave examples, this kind of bright olive over brown ground. The form is exceptionally rare for Dave. You typically don't see him making small vessels. We're normally associating him with ovoid vessels of several gallons or more. But what really makes this piece stand out, obviously, is the incised decoration. There are very few pieces with incised decoration attributed to David Drake. This piece is actually mentioned in Leonard Todd's book, Carolina Clay. We can see these figures going around it. Perhaps the most well-developed is this figure of a man with an outstretched arm. This same distinctive crossing pattern forming the legs can be found on a famous piece of signed David Drake stoneware with a horse and rider, with the rider actually displaying the same leg carving. So it really is a diagnostic trait that helps very strongly link this piece to David Drake's hand. Here's another piece which in Todd is described as a woman, possibly representing a woman. Maybe it's a torso, but you can see hair surrounding the head there. This motif here, described in Todd as a moon. And this other design here, which very well could be a sun with rays around it, or a sun face. At any rate, the small size of this vessel and the incised decoration indicate this was probably something specially made. To have a piece of David Drake stoneware that not only displays his potting ability, but also displays his ability at making incised drawings, artistic representations with a stylus, is almost unheard of. As I said, very, very few examples are known. And so this is a very important offering of his work, and we're looking forward to seeing how it does in the auction. Moving along, an early piece of Edgefield stoneware showing the distinctive glaze associated with Pottersville. This was made at the Pottersville Stoneware Manufactory sometime in the 1820s or 30s. This site was owned by Abner Landrum, and some of the better examples from this site display this grayish alkaline glazed ground with a heavier second dip of glaze in olive around the shoulder. Beautiful piece. What makes this special is the size. This is the smallest Pottersville jug that we've ever had, the smallest that I can recall seeing anywhere. These are typically larger, usually talking 2, 3, 4, 5 gallons in rare instances. This is, oh gosh, maybe about a quart or so. We can see this stamp at the base, a horseshoe or U, which is just typical of the period, doing this stamping at the base. Kind of enigmatic. People don't fully understand that. It possibly has to do with the potter who made it. It may not. And there's little incised scratch marks here, maybe a mistake, or maybe they were trying to convey something there as well. But another great piece out of this collection. Moving along, a rare South Carolina dispensary jug made during the late 19th century at the Joseph Gregory Bainham site in Trenton, South Carolina. Beautiful alkaline glaze. This rare stamp on the reverse involving the initials SC flanking a palmetto tree, and then the large word dispensary below refers to the state-run liquor facilities of late 19th century South Carolina. Not many of these survive today. Typical shoulder jug form of the period. Nice stamping and glaze. Very excited to have that in this sale. Here's another unusual piece from the same pottery. Here's Joseph Gregory Bain & Bowl, stamped JGB. Again, we're dealing with the late 19th century, so we have this jiggered bowl with a broad rim. Almost looks like some of the more mass-produced pottery pieces you'll see from the period, some of the brown and white stoneware, some of these molded yellowware or spongeware forms. You can see even the bottom has this foot, and then the potter has kind of carved out spots here to produce kind of foot-like pattern to that base, that beading at the base. But really rare form. Again, this is a rare mark. This is a fairly typical form with a rare mark. This is a rare form. You just don't see bowls very often from Edgefield, and from this time period, I can't recall seeing another stamped Bain & Bowl. Another piece, one of the leading lots of the entire collection, is this fabulous Trapp and Chandler bowl. This was made during a brief time period when Thomas Chandler was partnering with Reverend John Trapp, and you can see that mark on the interior, Trapp and Chandler. Beautiful alkaline glaze throughout. The exterior, you can see, has more of an olive tone to it with some stronger blue runs where the glaze is heavier. Really beautiful celadon coloration. Then on the interior, we have a different color. This is a strong bluer color, more truly celadon than the exterior throughout. Really bold iron slip decoration throughout, and these drape motifs relate to classically inspired designs that you can find all the way up in early New York stoneware and then down into the Baltimore stoneware tradition of 1820s where Thomas Chandler trained. We have a floral motif on the center surrounding that maker's mark. This is a piece that really combines three elements to produce a fabulous example of Edgefield stoneware. You have the form, the bowl form is very rare. There's not many examples known. We have a beautiful decoration and glaze, really speaks for itself. And then we have the rare maker's mark. This is only a 2 or 3 year mark. Trapp and Chandler impressed on the interior, much rarer than the Chandler maker mark that you see on a lot of Thomas Chandler's work. And so it's really a trifecta of form, decoration, and maker. And we're happy to have this as one of the lead examples from this collection of Edgefield stoneware. Moving along, a few other southern pieces. Nice Georgia Crawford County jug with impressed handle. Crawford County flower pot pitcher. North Carolina pitcher by Penland of Buncombe County. You can see the faint mark Penland here at the midsection. Moving along to Midwestern pottery, we have this really nice S. Stradley Logan, Ohio pitcher with the wonderful inscription, "Eat, drink, and be merry." Very unusual piece, nice star decoration at the midsection there. We're going to be showing a lot of Western Pennsylvania stoneware later, but we have this piece in the case right here. This is a highly unusual Swank Pottery, Johnstown, Pennsylvania chamber pot with cobalt decoration. A particularly late chamber pot for blue decorated stoneware. You typically see this form leaving around the 1840s in American use. But some potteries continued to make them. You'll see some Shenandoah multi-glazed chamber pots in Redware. And in this case, you'll see this example of swank stoneware bearing typical swank decoration and the swags and typical swank color. This is about maybe the third example of this form from this pottery that we've ever had. 1875, 1885, somewhere in there. Moving along, again from our South Carolina collection, we have an example of 20th century Alabama stoneware made by Norman Smith, a nice torso jug modeled after earlier examples from that state. Again, the torso form being really indicative of the face vessel culture in Alabama. For whatever reason, you'll see primarily face vessels from Edgefield being a head, an actual face in the form modeled around the jug. You'll see the same from Georgia, but when things head out to Alabama, you see this form much more typically, this torso, or this kind of a double-lobed form. This is a great face jug, again from the same 50-year South Carolina collection, probably upstate South Carolina, Greenville County area. There's even a chance you could say it was made by Rich Williams. It does relate in glaze to this Rich Williams jar that we'll be selling right here. This actually bears Williams's mark, but you can see strong similarity in clay right there. I mean, you can see that iron-rich clay. Glazes are slightly different, but again, it's that darker alkaline glaze. This face vessel is really interesting in that it had a rainbow handle going across the top. And so it was following that Edgefield, what they call the monkey jug style or harvest jug style. And this was acquired locally in South Carolina. And we believe in that attribution. They're quite, South Carolina face vessels are quite rare outside of the Edgefield area. So it's a nice addition to this auction. And moving along, we'll talk about this piece. This is the signed Rich Williams jar with lid. Very rare inclusion of its original lid. You can see here, and this is the only lidded example that we've had among the 3 or 4 signed Rich Williams pieces we had. This is the more typical form that you'll see when you do find an example signed by this potter. You can see his mark right there, Rich Williams. He potted in Greenville County during the late 19th and early 20th century. An African-American potter there's some famous pictures of him. You can find in some publications of him working at the wheel, which survive as basically the only early photos of an African-American potter at work. But you'll see this form by him. This one's a little more ovoid than other examples we've had. Also, the rim's a little bit nicer than we've had. And then it, including its lid, really makes this a special example. Another example of Southern pottery from a different consignor is this Sarah Owens 1901 salt glazed pitcher, signed by C.C. Ballard of Hayes, North Carolina. Classic Southern sine wave decoration. And we talk about, going back to this mug, we talk about S.H. Way starting in North Carolina. And then we have a 1901 North Carolina pitcher, and you can see maybe they're even in his early years, his formative years as a young man, you see some influence there. So it's interesting to see how these things travel from East Coast to West Coast. But this piece is very rare because we have a potter's mark on the front, an inscription to the owner on the back, and also a really delightful form, this beautiful vase-like pitcher form with strong salt drip here. Really neat new discovery. Couple very nice Anna pottery pigs. This is the smallest Anna pig that we've ever had. You can see just how petite it is. Classic Anna style inscription, good old bourbon in a hogs. The form, the way the snout is constructed with this slight curve to it, the way the face looks, everything really dates it to the early period of pig bottle production by the Kirkpatricks and Anna, probably about 1865 or so. You can see it's a sow, which is somewhat unusual. Typical Albany slip glaze, but wonderful size. It's a piece with a much rarer glaze. This is an Anna pig bottle with Rockingham glaze. Really beautiful spotted Rockingham glaze. This is the maybe third or fourth example that we've had of these Sanford Wells and Company's St. Louis Rockingham glaze pigs, but this one by far has the best glaze. Really beautiful spotting throughout, high gloss, and so the nature of the glaze often kept these from having really great incising. In this case, this example does have really great incising. You can see just how well the river is done on the back. Deeply incised, kind of a water pattern, stylized water pattern flowing through this Mississippi River. You can read all the town names on the back, and it's quite an elaborate map. We even have an inscription on the underside about Cincinnati, Chicago, the corn crib of the world. Really beautifully glazed example. Psyched to have that in this sale. Moving along, a newly discovered temperance jug. Great inscription, take care, they will bite. Again, we're referring to the evils of alcohol consumption, associating it with serpents. Serpents being, of course, associated biblically with the devil. Great stamp decoration around the base and the shoulder. Nice big snake handle, heavy scaling throughout. This is an Ohio piece. It could be Christytown pottery. We had another piece bearing an inscription for Christytown pottery that kind of had some similarities to it, and so this very well could be. But always fun to handle these. Moving along, the very nice Calvin Wilcox bowl with classic Man in the Moon decoration. One of the most iconic central Pennsylvania designs is the Man in the Moon motif, the profile of a man's face with this kind of bow or foliate motif surrounding it on one side. Scarce form for Calvin Wilcox in general, but much, much rarer when you have it with this Man in the Moon motif. And this came out of the James Giballo collection, most of which we sold in our last sale. But beautiful example of Central PA stoneware. Moving along, a couple nice pieces of Galena pottery, including a nice dipped jar. These are made out in Illinois. And this piece really showcases that slip decoration that pottery is known for, made during the second half of the 19th century. Nice advertising piece. This is from the William Bout collection, Maple Grove Stock Farm, Herkimer, New York. Attributed to N.A. White, Utica, New York. Nice Calvin batter pail. Moving along, a newly discovered late 19th, early 20th century jug from the Moravian potting tradition in North Carolina. Manganese glaze with some beautiful clear glazed runs here. Unusually large size. We've had some Moravian jugs in the past. This is by far the largest. One last piece I want to showcase is this beautiful 1 gallon jug attributed to George Lent from Troy, New York. Classic Lent floral decoration, but very large on the piece. Great small size to the vessel. Strong color. Really nice example of lengths and sizing. Moving along, we have some nice spaniel figures, including an Ohio example with bold cobalt decoration over a Bristol slip ground. And we have a nice Jordan example from Jordan, New York, bearing that maker's mark on the underside. Separate front leg right here. Sized hole in its mouth, Albany slip glazed surface. We have a wonderful piece made at the Donahoe Pottery in Parkersburg during the late 19th century. Bristol slip glazed ground with Albany slip spotting and cobalt decoration as well. Beautiful piece. Very few of these are known. We'll also be offering a wonderful selection of S. Risley Norwich molded pottery pitchers. These are very rare. Sidney Risley is more well known for his blue decorated stoneware produced during the mid-19th century, but a number of these molded pitchers do exist. Some of them are in the Metropolitan Museum of Art. This example you can see has the maker's mark S. Risley, Norwich. He was a Connecticut potter. These are very unusual, really cool. The Rockingham glazed grape pattern pitcher. This one is extremely rare. Cobalt decorated with kind of a Bristol ground. Again, S. Risley, Norwich with the 3 stamp below it. And this one actually has a faint inscription on the underside as well. Here's a corn pattern pitcher. These are quite rare. And it's, remarkable. We have 4 of them in this sale. These all came from the same collection. So I imagine it took decades to acquire all of these. And this one is really phenomenal with this white and kind of purplish brown slip spotting throughout it. Again, marked S. Risley, Norwich 3 on the underside. Very, very cool. Moving along, a couple nice pieces of New Jersey advertising right here, and a really fabulous collection of West Virginia advertising stoneware that we'll be selling. We have so many rare names, a lot of very small, obscure towns represented. This is a nice Proctor, West Virginia with star motif. Reevesville here and down there, exceptionally rare. Here's one that's Point Pleasant, West Virginia. A lot of these are in a desirable canning jar form. We have a Boyers and Hardin Palatine Maker's stencil piece with reverse stenciling. Moving along, we do a quick overview of these right here. We have some rare names like Sistersville and St. Albans, Moundsville, Littleton. Very, very cool grouping. Jackson Courthouse, Ravenswood, very desirable. Mark over here. Nice Fraser and Bishop from Martinsburg, and a number of wheeling pieces as well. Really long, here's more of them. If you're into West Virginia stoneware, this is a sale not to be missed. We'll also have a nice selection of John Bell Redware, highlighted by this Whippet. Impressed John W. Bell 3 times, right here, and right here. This is only the second John W. Bell Whippet that we've ever seen, and one of a very small number of glazed Whippets by any member of the Bell family known. We set a then record for John Bell pottery in 2004 or 5 when we sold one of these John W. Bell Whippets identically glazed for over $40,000. That example was in better condition, did not have the damage to the snout and the loss to the ear. But it'll be interesting to see what this example brings. This was recently discovered in the Waynesboro area, and it's scarce as hen's teeth. We had felt that the one that we sold 20 years ago was unique, but it turns out it's not. This is really a remarkable new discovery in Bell family pottery. We also have a number of examples made at the Bell Pottery while it was under the ownership and operation of John W. Bell's father, John Bell Sr. This beautiful green glazed canning jar with threaded interior. Nice cobalt decorated stoneware jar. This sale kind of showcases the Bell Pottery's variety in glaze and variety in form. These are these 2 modernist vases, really great. These dark, almost blackish copper glaze bearing the mark John Bell on the underside. It's a fabulous pair, extremely rare. and not something that you would expect to see from a country potter. You see the mark John Bell there, and that green glaze on the clear lead glazed interior there. But that's something that Bell's really known for, producing both stoneware and redware, both wheel thrown and molded wares. Here's a wheel thrown pitcher bearing the mark John Bell on the underside. But then you get into other things that are a little more classically inspired, a little more closely related to some of the Rockingham ware of the period. And you'll have something like this, a molded cherub's pitcher. This upswept handle, this upswept spout, mark John Bell Waynesboro on the underside. Also have some other forms here. It's a nice mold. Here's a group of custard molds. And this example is a little more unusual because it's actually decorated with sponge manganese. Stamp John Bell along the edge. Nice butter tub. Some more canning jars. Moving along, a great John Bell half-gallon pitcher. Very desirable form in stoneware. Great size. You can see it's a little bit smaller than you typically see. Classic John Bell spotted tulip motifs on the sides. This and a lot of the John Bell in this collection came out of a very old collection that was consigned to this auction. Here's another example from that collection, a beautiful green glazed flower pot bearing the John Bell maker's mark. There's another interesting canner with cobalt sponging. We have a good selection of Pennsylvania redware. Of course, I showed you the two plates in the beginning of the video, but we also have this very nice late 19th, early 20th century jar with tulip and bird motifs. Has some honest losses, typical of pieces from this period, but beautiful three-color slip decoration. It's a large size Dryville, Pennsylvania plate, unusually large size for those. Nice Solomon Miller flower pot, inscribed Solomon Miller with an 1881 date on the underside. Back here we have an unusual slip decorated redware jar with alternating copper and cream colored slip decoration. This recently surfaced in Pennsylvania. This is a Strasburg, Virginia wall pocket attributed to J. Eberly Company, made during the late 19th century. Unusually strong condition for this form. Typically you'll see them with like a loss to the handle, significant losses to the bird, various other flaws, large chips. This is a form you typically find in damaged condition. This is really in nice condition, has a couple stacker marks from the firing as made, and a loss to the tip of the bill, and that's pretty much it. Beautiful color. We'll be offering a large selection of linear metters pottery in this sale. This is perhaps the best example, a really expressive devil jug made during an earlier period in production, as seen in the glaze and the rock teeth. This piece has pierced ears, and Billy Metters actually made the bisque earrings for this at a later date, which is very cool. On the underside, we see the Linear Metters maker's mark. A couple early Linear Metters face jugs. These are made slightly earlier than this devil. They actually have glazed eyes, more reductive features. You can see this one is humorously looking to the side. Size Linear Metters on the underside. There's another early one made about the same period. Bulging orb-like eyes, glazed over. Again, signed Linear Metters on the underside. You have some more rock tooth examples, which date to the early to mid 1970s here, including this one I'm particularly fond of because just how many rock teeth are shown here. This one's a little bit later than the two on the left and right, but really great expression with a number of smaller rock teeth applied in there. And we have some later examples from the 1980s by Lanier. A couple pieces down here by Edwin Metters, including this rare Survivor, a piece that he actually bothered to glaze in fire despite the large loss to the face. And then here's a classic glazed Edwin Metters jug, and I'll just show you the inscription on the underside. Edwin Metters, 5/6, 1995. Additionally, we have some more Metters face jugs below, as well as this unusual E.J. Brown Evans Pottery face jug here. To get to the end of the cases, we have some interesting other lots, including this very rare jar, probably an apothecary jar, made at Benjamin Duval's Pottery in Richmond, Virginia, with a drape and tassel motif related to Northern designs of the time period and slightly earlier. Exceptional size, though. You can see how it's very petite, very unusual for pieces. This might be the smallest piece, surviving piece known, attributable to Richmond's early stoneware industry. Here's the underside. But as Duval was an apothecarist as well as a pottery owner, this is very likely one of the apothecary jars mentioned in his advertisements. Here's a beautiful picture attributed to Washington County, Virginia. Well, that piece dates to the 18 teens. This is much later in the 19th century. Beautiful form with this galleried rim, flowering plant motif on the front. More Metters face jugs here. This one has unusual clay applied to the interior of the eyelid. A couple last minute additions I want to show you. This is a fabulous Anna pig. One of the better brown glazed pigs we've had in recent years. Inscribed latest and most reliable railroad RR and river guide with a little good old bourbon and a hogs by Anna Pottery. Euston stock and a hogs, and actually has a nice little incised hand here pointing at the rear of the pig. Euston stock's probably referring to some type of bourbon. But what really takes the cake on this are these fabulous inscriptions. We have here, instead of just mentioning Jonesboro, it actually says Jonesboro has gone Democratic and is jubilant. We have an actual inscription added onto the town name, which is very cool. And then Centralia has the same type of treatment. Centralia has struck coal and she is happy. And it's dated November 1874, which helps us date the pig, obviously. One of the most remarkable things about this example is the inscription Anna Jug City and Southern Asylum, referring to the local mental asylum that was built a few years before this pig was made, and I believe opened sometime around a year after. Wonderful example, recently discovered in North Carolina, descended in the consignor's family. So it's a previously undocumented example. I also have another Anna pottery pig. This example, unfortunately, was broken in half, but again, has classic Anna inscription on here, and it says by Anna Pottery 1880, along with a railroad map on the reverse. We have a piece that we sold in one of our earliest sales from the Siemens Bank collection. It's Pennsylvania Redware Bank in the form of an African-American baby holding a bottle. We actually put the coin in the figure's mouth. Very cool. You can see this painted a session number on the back for Siemens Bank. Siemens Bank for Savings had a really fabulous coin bank collection that wasn't just pottery, although a lot of the best examples were pottery that famously sold at Christie's decades ago. We were able to sell a number of them in one of our earliest sales, and this piece has found its way back. Another added consignment is this Alamance County, North Carolina Redware dish with beautiful 4-color slip decoration. We actually have a yellow slip ground that it's dipped in, and we have unusual orange slip, which you really don't see very often outside of the state of North Carolina, and then copper and manganese. Great early example dating to the late 18th century. Moving along, an eclectic mix of other things, some John Doe, nice Stoneware Spaniel, 19th century pipe mold. Moving along here, we have, again, a mix of things, and most of this is, if not all of it, is added lots that can be seen on our website, not in our printed catalog. I wanted to show this to you. This is a really wonderful mug that actually has a hand model and applied dog on it. You can see this work isn't molded. This is all hand done and hand incised. Really beautiful, very delicate. You have a little fence here, flower coming up behind it. This is a presentation mug, impressed AR, May 18th, 1890 on the underside. This is made at the White's Pottery in Utica, New York. There's a related piece with an applied sheep that is actually in the Weitzman Stoneware collection at the New York State Museum in Albany, New York. And then this is a cute little toy mouse, whoops, made for William Pfeiffer, and actually says November 2nd, 1891, give, probably means to say gift. This is made for the son of a potter, William Pfeiffer, upon his birth. And so this was actually an infant's toy. So as a result, it has some losses and some restoration, but it's really cool when you delve not just into the art of these pieces, but actual history of these pieces and who they were made for. We have a lot of sewer tile in this sale. A lot of things in the bottom of the case, a lot of interesting stump form things, nice frog with glass eyes. We have a great example of Daniel Siegel stoneware. This is a classic 4-handled jar. This is the premier form that this potter made. If we think of Daniel Siegel at his best, we think of his large 10 to 20 gallon vessels that have 4 handles. You can see just how skilled this potter was. Thin, delicate rim, perfect ball-shaped form, deep pocket handles throughout. He was a real master of his craft and seemed to be proud to showcase that. We have his impressed maker's mark right here, DS, on the top of the handle, as well as another DS on the opposing handle. Great form, wonderful size. We have a great selection of Northeastern stoneware made during the 3rd quarter of the 19th century, including a number of great Norton examples. This J. Norton and Company, circa 1860 churn, showcases their pheasant motif very well. Excellent coverage over the front, that bold enamel-like cobalt for which this pottery is known. This was made shortly after the Mark J. Norton for Julius and Edward Norton that you typically see motifs like this associated with. This wonderful 6-gallon J. Norton, Bennington, Vermont, crock, circa 1855, with highly unusual composition to the design. You can see that central flower basket dominating the scene with a smaller deer beside it and a smaller house beside it. Typically, you'd see that deer or that house as the centerpiece of the design. So this is very unusual. It's also rare in and of itself just to have a piece with 3 leading designs on a single object. So really wonderful object. Great size, has some restoration, but the blue is in wonderful condition. And again, it's that, what they call Benny blue, that enamel-like cobalt, thick and bold. This was on the cover, actually the only cover lot of one of Bruce and Vicki Wastorp's final sales in 2009. And it is a showstopper for sure. We're excited to have it in this sale. This has been off the market since that time. Another piece with a New York State aesthetic but made in Pennsylvania is this Calvin and Wilcox 4-gallon Harrisburg PA jug. recently surfaced in Pennsylvania. Beautiful slip trail sunflower motif going throughout it. Slip trailing, of course, is significantly rarer than brush decorations on Calvin & Wilcox stoneware. This has wonderful color, about a 10 out of 10 if you were to use a rating scale. That shading on the interior is reminiscent of the Rochester tradition, but really powerfully decorated piece on a nice large size jug. Another piece consigned from the same collection as the 6-gallon Norton flower basket deer and house crock is this rare 4-gallon Janie Norton standing stag. Great large size design, desirable standing stance to the deer, and exceptional size to the jug. It's tough to find a jug of this capacity, 4 gallons, with the deer on them. We've only had a few over the years. And this was a cover lot in one of Wasdorf's auctions back in 2008. Here's a piece that bears no necessary introduction. This fabulous William Farrar cat crock. This is lot number 1 in the sale. This piece was lost to history since the late 1980s when it was famously offered at the Denlinger auction in Bennington, Vermont. Really powerful example of folk art decoration that kind of transcends the stoneware medium. In and of itself, it's just a wonderful example of folk portraiture. You can see that the design is executed with both brushed and slip trail elements, as well as incising, forming fur, a ruff around the cat's neck, and fur on the face and ears, and this kind of psychedelic spiral to the yarn here, as well as, if you can get in close, you can even see the fingers, the little toes of the cat are delineated with incising. Wonderful size, exceptional color, unique decoration to our knowledge. We know of no other cat produced by William Farrar, and this is believed to be the best representation of a house cat in American stoneware. You can see the base here is inscribed Gettysburg, referring to the town of Gettys, where the piece was made. The underside also bears an inscription A. Streever, which indicates it was made for a local farmer in a nearby town, and that this was almost certainly a specially ordered piece for him, possibly depicting Streever's own house cat. It's an incredible example. We always wonder where certain pieces went, and this was one of the pieces at the top of our list. It's wonderful when you can get 2 pieces that closely relate to each other by the same potter in the same sale. And in this case, we have a great Jonathan Fenton Boston jug, showing his distinctive impressed fish design. See very nicely detailed design with scaling throughout. Dating to the late 18th century, this example was really special because of the incised decoration below it. Very few attributable examples to Fenton's hand with hand incised decoration are known. We know they're different stamp designs, the fish, the JF cartouche, the bird with grapes, the flower, but you don't see much handwork done by him in the decoration. And so this, we believe, is kind of a swath of seaweed below the fish. Very cool. And we have these open circles on it, which relate to Manhattan as well as some other early examples of New England stoneware. But perhaps the most important example of fish decorated stoneware by Fenton that we've offered because of that addition of the incised design. But then we have this piece that was consigned by a different consigner. This is a Jonathan Fenton piece bearing his maker's mark here at the shoulder, J. Fenton, that was probably made in the early 19th century in Dorset, Vermont, bearing an impressed fish design. You can see the fish is actually a little bit different, has less detail. It's highlighted in brushed cobalt. This mark, J. Fenton, is typically seen in all caps. So capital J-F-E-N-T-O-N. In this case, we have this lowercase Enton is unique to us. We haven't seen it before. And so while this piece was probably made in Dorset, Vermont, as noted by Lorraine German, a huge expert on Boston area stoneware, Fenton went to a couple other places. So this possibly could be an even rarer work from one of these other sites. But to have both of them together in the sale is really interesting, and it really kind of showcases the changes in style over the period. You know, you see the different maker's mark used, you see the different colored clay, the different fish, but again, he's keeping the same themes. So very cool to have both in the same auction. We have a wonderful example of mid-19th century Rochester stoneware. This is a Harrington and Berger Rochester 6-gallon crock with elaborate game bird scene. Really beautiful decoration, lavish cobalt brush slip trailing, unbelievable color, very electric in both the cobalt and how it interacts with that light clay background. And the maker's mark is really a duo of two of the leading 19th century potters from New York State. We have Thompson Harrington and John Berger working together to produce these masterworks. In this case, the decoration is applied by John Berger. Wonderful grouse design, typical of Berger's artistic slip trailing. We have this nice detail around the bird, appealing turned head stance, cattails behind the bird, and one of Berger's distinctive tree motifs here. Nice shrubs flanking the base of the tree. We have shrubs throughout here. Again, this is all typical of Berger's better work. He really was taking decoration to the next level and making it a painting of sorts. Great size of the vessel as well, and great condition. Came out of a major collection, and we're really excited to offer it in this sale. Moving along, we have a J&E Norton 2-gallon jug with fabulous slip trail bird design. This is probably decorated by James Riley, a New York State potter who traveled during part of his career. And the design differs markedly from John Hilfinger's work that's more commonly associated with J&E Norton. We all know John Hilfinger, the German immigrant potter who did a lot of the slip trail deer and house and bird scenes for the Nortons. In this case, Riley, the probable decorator, has done this wonderful vining throughout the bird's body, dashing on the tail, very folky design. We've seen other decorations by this hand with different maker's marks outside of Bennington. And so he traveled around a bit, but a really wonderful aesthetic and style of design that he did here. Additional elaborate vining below, and even a sprig in the bird's mouth. Following that, we have a typical Hilfinger motif, the iconic Norton deer with house. This is made about 1855. We have this pastoral scene of this large country mansion, farmhouse, the large deer really filling out the scene nicely with spots and a turned head, split rail fence in the front, and then a pine tree here. This is one of the most iconic or memorable images in all of American stoneware right here. When we think of American stoneware decoration from the third quarter of the 19th century, one of the things that instantly comes to mind are the Norton deer designs done by Hilfinger. So very nice addition to this sale. Came out of a very old collection. Moving along, here's another piece from our South Carolina collection. This is a fabulous Columbia, South Carolina jar made by the Landrums. One of the best examples of Columbia stoneware known. Really stands out for its size. Incised 8 under one handle for 8 gallons. If you can get that real quick. Really beautiful, abstract, kind of modernist alkaline glaze. We have this grayish ground with these swaths of brown going throughout. And then the most important aspect of it is the inscription. From W. Riley, Columbia, South Carolina. Riley owned a grocery store during the 1860s in Columbia. You can find other pieces with Columbia inscriptions that were made by Colin Rhodes in Edgefield, but this is the first example of Columbia-made stoneware that we have seen. There's an inscription for a local merchant. And so, kind of as I said with the Thomas Chandler Bowl, this is mixing kind of multiple aspects of characteristics of pottery that really make this desirable. The size, the glaze, as well as the inscription. So, wonderful piece. When that was found, that was originally painted, and the owner consigned his collection, stripped it, and found that on it. This was sometime, I believe, back in the 1980s. So very, very cool piece. We've got a trifecta of William H. Farrar, Getty's, New York, bird decorated jugs. Farrar is really well known for his wonderful bird designs. Of course, this is the same maker as the iconic cat crock I just showed you a little bit ago. These have both brushed and slip-trailed elements. Most of these have really elaborate slip trailing below the birds, forming either ground, or in this case we have a flourish. This piece is perhaps most unusual among the group in that the bird has a turned head stance, which you typically don't see on those bird designs. Wonderful pieces. Moving along to Janie Norton and Julius Norton Bennington, Vermont pieces. We have a rooster with slip shell decoration attributed to John Hilfinger, and then we have another by an anonymous artist, possibly Julius Norton himself. This piece has a swan on a nest, exceptionally rare. This is the only example bearing this design that we've had. Moving along, some nice house decorated pieces in A.O. Whitmore with their very distinctive house design with palm trees, as well as a Janie Norton reclining deer with house on a desirable 5-gallon form with pine tree in the distance. We also have some other bird decorated pieces from New York State, including a West Troy double bird decorated piece with unusual birds, including one in feeding stands. 2 E.T. Ford Flying Eagle decorated pieces. Very rare mark. It's from Mechanicville, New York. And another great New York State bird to highlight is this W.A. Lewis Galesville double-handled jug with a turkey decoration. Very great design on that, reminiscent of John James Audubon's depiction of a female turkey. We also have a very rare Hamilton & Jones 10-gallon churn. This is one of the other standout pieces of Western Pennsylvania stoneware we have in this sale, bearing a rare potter's signature on the reverse. You can see it stenciled there at the base. This vessel has some restoration on it, but is exceptional in its size and its inclusion of a young potter's signature on it. There's an additional mark for that potter on the underside. We have a rare political jar inscribed Sam Scott, Harrison, and Protection, referring to President Benjamin Harrison and his goal to put through protective tariffs during his presidency. We have a newly discovered 3-gallon pitcher with beautiful form, highly ovoid, short collar, kind of English in form. And we can see that lavish cobalt flowering vine motif going all the way around it, desirable 3-gallon size, very desirable Huntington maker. Up on the top row, a rare Ohio churn with human face decoration. You can see he's either got his tongue sticking out or maybe he's saying something, but really nice folk art image. We have a jug cooler beside it. It's probably Albany, New York, circa 1820, with an incised bird. Lavishly decorated water cooler made at the William Linton Pottery in West Baltimore during the mid-19th century. Really wonderful decoration, and you'll see very similar designs produced by the Perrines at their nearby shop, but this one is firmly attributable to Linton based on the specific style, the way that brushwork is done. And we have a beautiful piece of pottery that's not American. This is an English platter with slip decoration. early 19th century, really boldly decorated slip work, an exceptional size, previously sold by Jerome Bloom of Lisbon, Connecticut. 3 nice BB Craig jugs, including this monumental example of rare size. A very unusual umbrella stand signed by Municipal Pottery. You see this raised inscription, "Let me hold your umbrella." Municipal Pottery was in Illinois, and this shop actually operated in a prison. So this is an example of prison art, much like you have Civil War pipes and things like that. So this is a really interesting early 20th century piece of pottery that was actually made by prisoners. It bears that Municipal Pottery inscription on the underside. Newly discovered Baltimore jar right here with applied pears decoration. This is the only one we've ever seen. This is a late period piece made by the Perrines, but for whatever reason, probably because this was some kind of special piece made for somebody to preserve fruit, this molded and applied design was added. Nice selection of pitchers, including a rare 3-gallon Baltimore pitcher from an old John Bell collection amassed over several decades. We have this John Bell Waynesboro jar with bold spotted tulip decoration. A nice mix of other pottery from throughout the East Coast, including an unusual 1890 pitcher decorated piece. Moving into the next room, I'm going to show you some nice examples of Edgefield stoneware. This came out of the 50-year collection we had discussed earlier. Some nice slip decorated pieces by Chandler, including this pitcher with iron slip decoration, nice form, desirable small size. Beautiful squat shaped potting, a little bit unusual for that potter. A nice handled jar or stew pot with slip-shelled kaolin decoration related to Baltimore motifs from about a couple decades earlier. A nice Phoenix factory piece made along Shaw's Creek about 1840. And this could be an early decoration by Chandler. It has a Baltimore-inspired daisy motif, but this leaf design is very unusual. I can't recall seeing that specific motif done in Edgefield. This was executed in iron slip, desirable open-handled form. Wonderful 2-color slip decorated cake crock, rare form and rare decoration. We have brushed iron slip and slip trailed kaolin slip throughout, very cool. Chandler bowl, in this case we have the Mark Chandler Maker. Nice Celadon alkaline glaze. We have some blue runs here at the shoulder and kaolin slip drape motif throughout. Another Chandler piece possibly made during the partnership with Trapp and Chandler. Unusually small size clabber bowl. You see how it kind of fits in my hand. It's unusual size, really bold iron slip decoration throughout. Columbia clabber bowl, a very nice attributed Colin Rhodes jug with slip trail daisy motif and incised X at the shoulder. Also iron decorated at the handles. More Chandler pieces, including this jug, which is probably Trapp and Chandler with a really bold sunflower and a run on it. Very clean piece, expertly thrown and glazed and decorated. A rare J.W. Siegler Pine House, South Carolina piece bearing his maker's mark here. He potted along Shaw's Creek. The Pine House impression refers to the local post office. But not too many of these sign examples are known. We sold a very rare face vessel in our last auction that bore the mark of his son at the base in a similar manner. Beautifully glazed Dave jar showing exceptional, highly unusual root seal application throughout. And the shoulder bears an incised horseshoe and 2 punctates for 2 gallons. More Chandler attributed stoneware, including an example from Phoenix Factory. A nice Welchel 2-gallon jar. Spartanburg, South Carolina area. And a scarce W.F. Hahn, Trenton, South Carolina, alkaline glazed jar. So one thing about this collection, it has some usual marks in here, including J.P. Bodie from Kirksey's Crossroads. (1860s) piece. Nice glaze. And some other pieces, including this beautifully glazed jug. Possibly an early example of Columbia stoneware. Look at the glaze on this, really beautiful glaze. And an X at the handle, but it differs slightly from the well-known Landrum cross. But this could be a very early example of the Landrum family's work in Columbia, or it could possibly be an early Edgefield example. We have a couple other nice pieces down there as well. Moving along, these other pieces from this collection, a fabulous 1822 jug. This is probably made by David Drake, based on the distinctive double molded collar here. You see this stepped molding here is very typical of Dave's work. You'll see that all the way into the 1850s and possibly even early 1860s in Dave's work. Beautiful glaze. This was made at Pottersville, and so this would have been made when Dave was about 22 years old. The thumb impression here. Very high fired and beautifully glazed. We even have this interesting treatment here, which suggests maybe a piece of glass was put there as sort of a kiln tester, if you will. Almost like a cone, pyrometric cone that would tell you when the glaze, when the kiln was up to temperature. But there's only a couple pieces dated before this that were made in Edgefield. So this early date is remarkable. There's a piece dated 1820 that was, I believe 1820, that was made by Abner Landrum at Pottersville. There's a couple other pieces from the early 1820s. This really dates to the period of the very earliest inscribed stoneware from Edgefield. And of course, a lot of these early 1820s to 1830s pieces that bear those dates are attributed to Dave. They very well could be by Dave's hand. And of course, his work would then go on to see him putting his name on pieces, poems on pieces, the initials of one of his enslavers, Lewis Miles. But as one of the earliest inscribed examples of Edgefield stoneware known, this piece is incredibly important, and we're excited to have it in this sale. A jar attributed to another enslaved potter, Harry, who was a contemporary of David Drake's at Pottersville, will be offered. This one has the inscription August 3rd, 1836. Has a broad flattened rim. It's set very close to the flattened handles. And the inscription here, including a distinctive G with upswept terminal, leads to a strong attribution to Harry. There's only a few inscribed pieces attributed to Harry known. More might show up as people really consider these dates and the architecture of the potting of the pieces. Pieces that maybe previously were attributed to David Drake might be assigned to Harry now. We famously sold a signed Harry several years ago, and there are also one or two other signed Harry examples known, but to have a piece that has any inscription on it attributed to his hand is exceptionally rare. We're talking somewhere around, 4 or 5 known pieces. So very excited to have that in this sale. This jar is probably attributable to Dave based on the rim molding, the way the handles are placed. You can see they're not as flat as on this Harry jar. The rim is narrower and it's a rounded rim. This B stamp is highly unusual. These jars date to the early 1820s, and we know that because of the survival of at least one jar with an early 1820s date that has the B stamp on it. We have 5 punctates here for 5 gallons. Nice early style form with a narrower base and a wider midsection, but beautiful early period Pottersville jar. Moving on for another about 30 years later, we have a piece of Dave's work when he was working for Lewis Miles, about 1855, bearing the inscription LM. And Lewis Miles was a pottery owner who had a shop factory in the Horse Creek Valley area of Edgefield. It's called the Stony Bluff Manufactory, and this is the period from which we'll find most of David Drake's work. You'll see in size X here, this is one of the hallmarks Dave used on his pieces. Sometimes you'll see 2 slash marks, sometimes you'll see a horseshoe. In other cases, you'll see an X. This bears a particularly deep and crisp incised inscription for his enslaver. Measures about 5 gallons in capacity, is in really good condition, newly discovered example. This is an example from the 50-year collection that we'll be selling. This has LM, but it's incised vertically. Dave probably held this piece on its side when he inscribed it. We just talked about the hallmark X. In this case, we have 2 slashes, which is another marking you'll see from David Drake. 3 punctates here for 3 gallons as well. Nice glaze runs. Really great condition. Both these jars, but this one in particular, survive in really great condition. Moving along, we have a couple other pieces, including a nice kaolin decorated piece by Thomas Chandler, and another piece by Thomas Chandler showing another one of his motifs, the broken stem floral motif, executed in iron slip. If you bring it around here, the very rare Ohio pitcher, decorated in the Baltimore style. Whoever made this pitcher in Ohio was probably trained in the Baltimore stoneware tradition. Is Mark A. and J.H. Rhodes, Middlebury, Ohio. Great, large size form, wonderful decoration. If we can squeeze in here and see the bottom of this jar, you'll see that it's inscribed Jacob J. Swank with a date on the underside. This was made at the Swank Pottery in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. It has a highly unusual carved base. You can see he flipped this piece upside down and actually tooled this out, and then for whatever reason bothered to carve his name in the bottom. It's a special piece. There's not many hand-signed examples of Swank stoneware known, and this bears one of their maker's marks that you'll see, J. Swank and Company, Johnstown, PA, and it bears classic Swank tulip decoration on the front and reverse. Moving along, we got some of the big ware from Western Pennsylvania, nice Hamilton Jones 10-gallon jar, a fabulous newly discovered James Hamilton 16-gallon jar. You can see it makes great use of brushed and slip-trailed elements. Wonderful fuchsia decoration here, more floral designs here, striping throughout, vining here, a 16 with spots around it, graduated stripes here. It's really top to bottom, beautifully decorated example in strong condition that came out of nowhere. This is an added lot in our auction, so it didn't make our print catalog, but we're excited to have it in this sale. Moving along, we have a 12-gallon jar that was probably made by either James Hamilton or William Leet Hamilton in Greensburg, Pennsylvania, bearing a 12 at the base. And one of the better examples of Isaac Hewitt's work that we've sold, this 5-gallon jar that has dynamic brushed vining with dotted flowers. Isaac Hewitt was a school teacher, but he was also a potter, and the pieces known by his hand are very well made. Last sale, we set a record for Hewitt's work. This is another fine example. Moving along, we have a really eclectic mix of things all the way back to the early 19th century with J. Remy in Manhattan, New York. We have some Cushman pieces an early Carpenter jug from Boston, but then we have some later examples of Calvin and Wilcox stoneware in Western Pennsylvania, West Virginia, New York State stoneware. Moving along, the same thing here. We really have a kind of a mix of time and place in American stoneware production. Also have some nice slip trail birds. Good selection of birds here, including this piece is a rare syrup jug, stamped Janie Norton, first we've had with a bird motif. Nice cooler by Satterley and Morey, New York State. Large selection of bird motifs, northeastern mid-Atlantic, and as well as a southern piece here, Schermerhorn. Richmond jar. Again, this follows the collection that I showed you in the case of West Virginia stoneware, some really strong advertising pieces with rare names you don't typically see. There's a nice Wilkinson and Fleming, Shinston, West Virginia 6-gallon jar with strong brushed and stencil decoration. Moving along, a mix of bird decorated pieces and other northeastern pieces. Additionally, an eagle decorated piece by Alexander Conrad. Another mix of stoneware here that we'll be offering towards the end of the sale. One of the masterpieces of this sale is this large-size jug-form water cooler made for Henry King, a farmer and iron manufacturer in Salem, Ohio, about 1860. And you can see at the base it was made by Gurdon Purdy in Atwater, Ohio. Purdy was the son of one of kind of leading early period potters from Ohio, Solomon Purdy. The decoration on it is clearly inspired by Rochester motifs done by John Berger, and I've even seen a Harrington piece with a similar motif from Lyons. Really artistic slip trailing on this piece. You can see that there's a three-dimensional quality added to the cornucopia with this striping added to the sides. The artist had a concept of depth, not just representing flowers, but representing them as they kind of turned and the petals curled. We have narrower petals here. They get larger as they unfurl down here. We get a sense that this sunflower is kind of pushing back in the scene. We get a sense that this flower's kind of curling this way with its leaves. So this person knew about perspective. He was a true decorator, a very painterly decorator. It wasn't just about putting a two-dimensional design on the piece. Wonderful form, obviously, exceptionally large size. There's some slip trailing added at the spout. That's a decorative treatment, as well as faux screw heads added to the handle terminals. Wonderful color. Bold decoration to the bunghole, this floral motif surrounding it. There's really nothing negative you could say about this piece. It's an exceptional form, it has exceptional decoration, it's in great condition, it has great color, and it's inscribed both for the owner and by the maker. So a real tour de force of Ohio stoneware, related pieces pictured on an early issue of the magazine Antiques from its formative years as a publication. But we're very excited to have it in this auction. Certainly one of the best pieces of Ohio stoneware to come to auction in years. Last but not least, we have another fabulous water cooler. This presentation water cooler was made by Beaver, Pennsylvania potter James Hamilton for a local innkeeper named William Powers. You can see it really is a masterwork of both form and decoration. It has a two-piece construction. This dramatic pedestal base was thrown individually, and this cooler top was thrown separately, and they were applied together prior to firing. Really exceptional potting in this example. Typically when you see a pedestal-based water cooler from the region, it's going to be an ovoid form, something like this, with a rim put on it. This beverage urn shape is highly unusual, remarkable. The other thing that I would say is the way these handles are done. These dramatic open handles with ribbing, highly unusual for the region. Typically, you're going to see lugs that are applied to the body of the vessel. This decorative brushwork, done by Hamilton somewhere during the late 1840s, would be brought to Greensboro and used as some of the leading decorative techniques, decorative motifs used by both James Hamilton and his brother William Lee Hamilton in Greensboro. You can see on the reverse, it actually bears the potter's own inscribed initials JH within a brushed wreath, as well as the maker's mark J. Hamilton Beaver. We were contacted by somebody out of the blue with this, and it's always amazing to us what's still out there. This piece just descended in the consignor's family, and he couldn't even remember where it came from. But it clearly is irrefutably the best example of Beaver, Pennsylvania stoneware, and a masterpiece from the region. We're really honored to bring it to you. One of the exciting things about this auction business is bringing new discoveries to the forefront, and this is one of them. So if you have any question about this piece or any other pieces in our sale, you can contact us at info@crockerfarm.com or speak directly to a member of the Zip family at 410-472-2016. Again, this sale runs from the 5th through the 14th with a phone bid session for items bringing $10,000 or more on the 15th. Thank you so much for joining us.